At my son's anniversary party, my daughter-in-law raised her glass, smiled brightly, and said, "This woman right here? She's the one who pays for everything. Our personal ATM." People laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just enough that I smiled too that I didn't correct her. "Not yet, that I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels." The party was held in a large backyard behind my son's house in suburban Illinois. String lights hung across the patio, casting a soft golden glow over neatly arranged tables. There was catered food, shrimp cocktail, carved roast beef, tiny desserts arranged like jewels on glass trays. Everything looked perfect that I had paid for most of it. Of course, no one said that out loud. Not directly. Not until her little toast that I stood near the edge of the crowd, holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't touched. At 68, I don't drink much anymore. My doctor says it's better for my blood pressure. Not that anyone here had asked. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, stood in the center like she always did, effortlessly polished. Her dress was cream-colored silk, the kind that clings in all the right places. Her hair was styled in loose waves, her makeup flawless even under the harsh patio lights. She had a way of commanding attention without raising her voice. And tonight, she had everyone's attention. "To 10 beautiful years," she said, lifting her glass toward my son. "And to the people who made it all possible." She turned slightly toward me. That's when she said it. "Our ATM." Another ripple of laughter that I noticed how some people avoided my eyes. A few smiled at me, the kind of tight, polite smiles people give when they're not sure if something crossed a line. My son laughed too. That part stayed with me. That I've always believed that family celebrations should feel warm, safe, like stepping into a place where you belong without question. That's what I thought this night would be. I had spent 3 weeks helping plan it. 3 weeks coordinating with the caterer, transferring money, adjusting guest lists, making sure everything was exactly how Vanessa wanted it. She had told me, "I just want something elegant, nothing too much." Elegant, it turned out, was expensive, but I didn't mind. I never did. I remember standing in my kitchen the morning of the party, carefully wrapping the gift I bought them. A custom photo album, leather-bound, embossed with their wedding date. Inside, I had placed pictures from the past 10 years. Vacations, holidays, birthdays, moments I thought meant something. I tied the ribbon slowly, smoothing it down with my fingers. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. Arthritis, mostly. Comes with age. I suppose. I looked at the album for a long time before placing it in the gift bag. I felt proud of the life my son had built. Proud that I had been able to help him along the way. That feeling didn't last very long. Back at the party, conversations resumed quickly after the toast. Music started again, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Plates clinked, glasses refilled. Laughter floated through the air like nothing had happened, but something had. I could feel it. Not in the room. I moved toward one of the tables and set my untouched drink down. My reflection caught briefly in the glass surface. Silver hair pulled back neatly. A navy blue dress I had chosen carefully for tonight. Simple, respectful, invisible. "Don't take it too seriously," someone said beside me. I turned to see Linda, one of Vanessa's friends. I had met her a few times before. "She jokes like that," Linda added, lowering her voice slightly. "It's just her sense of humor." I nodded. "Of course," I said, because what else was there to say? Across the yard, I watched my son. He was smiling, talking, completely at ease. At one point, he glanced in my direction. For a second, just a second, our eyes met. Then he looked away. It's a strange thing, realizing that a moment you just lived wasn't an accident. It settles slowly, like dust. You don't notice it at first, but then it's everywhere. I stayed for another hour. I spoke when spoken to, smiled when expected, even complimented the food, though I had barely eaten. Vanessa didn't mention the toast again. She didn't need to. When I finally left, no one stopped me. My son was busy. Vanessa was laughing with a group near the bar. I placed the gift on the table by the door and walked out quietly. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The house felt still, too still. I replayed her words in my mind. Our ATM. Not mother. Not family. Not even my name. Just a function. A role. A resource. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. Not yet. Instead, I walked into my study, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder I hadn't looked at in years, because somewhere, Deep down, I had the feeling that this wasn't the first time. Just the first time I finally heard it out loud. The house always feels bigger at night, especially after something breaks that no one else seems to notice. I didn't turn on all the lights when I got home, just the small lamp in the corner of the living room. The one my husband used to read under every evening before he passed. The soft yellow glow barely reached the walls, leaving the rest of the house in shadows. I sat down slowly, placing my purse beside me. For a long time, I didn't move. There's a particular kind of silence that follows humiliation, that it's not loud. It doesn't scream. It lingers. I replayed the moment again. Her voice. Light. Effortless. Our ATM. The way the words slipped so easily into conversation. Like she had said them before. Like she had thought them many times. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the laughter, the ease. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. And that's when the memories started coming back. Not all at once. One by one. Small things. Things I had dismissed before. Mom doesn't mind. She always helps. I heard Vanessa's voice in my memory. Casual, almost cheerful. It was from last Christmas. They had wanted to upgrade their kitchen. Granite countertops. Custom cabinets. A larger island for entertaining guests. It'll make hosting so much easier. She had said that my son had looked at me then. Not directly. Just expectantly. I remember smiling. Of course I said yes. Another memory surfaced. 2 years ago. Their second car broke down. Vanessa didn't call me. My son did. Just temporary, Mom, he had said. We'll pay you back. I told him not to worry about it. I never brought it up again. Neither did he. Then, there was the daycare situation. When their youngest was born, Vanessa had insisted on going back to work within months. Something about maintaining her career momentum. Daycare is so expensive, she had said. Sighing heavily, I offered to help. 3 days a week turned into 5.5 turned into whenever they needed an payment. No discussion, just expected. I opened my eyes. The room felt colder the time. None of it had felt wronged. That's the strange part. Each request had come wrapped in something soft. A reason. A justification. A tone that made it feel natural. Family helps family. That's what I told myself. But sitting there, in that dimly lit room, something shifted. Not in what had happened, in how I understood it. I stood up and walked slowly toward the kitchen. The tile felt cool under my feet. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady despite the thoughts circling in my mind. I've always been good at staying calm. It's something life teaches you. Especially after loss. I glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall. There were notes scribbled in blue ink. Transfer for party. $8. 500 caterer final. Payment, gift album. I stared at the number for a moment. $8. 500 for one night. I didn't regret the money. That wasn't it was what it meant. I took the glass of water and walked back to the living room. Sat down again. And this time, I didn't close my eyes. Instead, I started asking myself something I hadn't asked in years. Not how can I help? Not what do they need? But something else, something quieter, sharper. When did this start? The answer didn't come immediately, but I could feel it forming, like a pattern just beginning to reveal itself. There had been changes, subtle ones, easy to miss if you weren't looking. Vanessa had started speaking for my son more often, deciding things before he even responded. Oh, we already talked about that. We figured this would be best. We assumed you wouldn't mind. Assumed. That word came up a lot. My son had changed too. Not dramatically. Just enough that he avoided certain conversations, especially when money was involved. If I ever hesitated, even slightly, he would go quiet, and Vanessa would step in smooth, polished, convincing that I thought it was just marriage. Adjustments, compromises. That's what I told myself. But now, sitting there in the half-dark, with her voice still echoing in my mind, I wasn't so sure anymore. Because jokes, real jokes, don't land like that. They don't leave a room slightly off balance. They don't make people look away. They don't make you go home and sit in the dark, replaying them over and over. No, that wasn't a joke. That was the truth, dressed up just enough to be acceptable. I took a slow sip of water, set the glass down carefully, and looked toward the hallway leading to my study. The folder I had opened earlier was still there, waiting. I didn't rush, didn't panic, didn't call anyone. I simply sat there and let the realization settle fully into place. This wasn't about one comment, one night, one moment. This was something that had been building for years. And somehow, I had helped build it. The next morning, everything looked normal. That was the unsettling part. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, landing softly on the countertop. The coffee machine hummed quietly as it brewed my usual cup. Outside, a neighbor walked their dog, waving as they passed. Life continued as if nothing had shifted, but something had. Inside me, I carried my coffee to the dining table and sat down in the same chair I've used for over 20 years. The wood creaked slightly under my weight. Familiar, steady, unchanged. Unlike everything else, I don't rush into conclusions that I never have. Life teaches you that reacting too quickly often leads to regret. So instead, I do what I've always done best, I observe. And once I started looking, I couldn't stop seeing it. It began with something small. A text message. Mom, can you send $1,200 today? It's for the kids' school activity. Deadline's tight. No greeting. No explanation beyond that. Just expectation. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. What activity? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, just something Vanessa already signed them up for. It's important. Important. Another word they used often. Important meant I wouldn't question it. Important meant I would say yes. I didn't respond right away. That alone felt different. Instead, I set my phone down and took a sip of coffee. It had gone slightly cold. A few minutes later, another message came. Mom? No warmth in how are you? Just a follow-up. A reminder. I looked at the screen. And for the first time, I didn't feel like helping. That realization surprised me more than anything else. Not anger, not sadness, just absence. I picked up the phone again, typed slowly. I'll think about it. I stared at the message before pressing send. 3 simple words. And yet, they felt heavier than anything I had said in years. The reply came almost instantly. What's there to think about? I leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly. There it was, not concern, not confusion, but resistance. As if my hesitation had broken an unspoken rule. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up and walked toward the hallway, past the living room, into my study. The folder was still on the desk where I had left it the night before. I opened it carefully. Inside were years of records, bank statements, transfer receipts, notes I had scribbled down over time. Not because I was suspicious, but because I've always believed in being organized. Now, those papers told a story I hadn't been ready to read before. I flipped through them slowly. $5,000. Home renovation help. $2. $300. Emergency car repair. $8. $500. Anniversary party. $1. $200. School activity. The numbers blurred together after a while. But the pattern didn't. It wasn't just the money. It was the rhythm. Request. Pause. Transfer. Gratitude. Brief. Often delayed. Then silence. Until the next request. I sat down at the desk. The chair felt harder than I remembered. I thought about my son. About the boy who used to save his allowance in a little jar on his dresser. Who once cried because he lost a dollar bill at the grocery store. He used to understand the value of things. Not just money, but effort, time, care. When had that changed? Or had it? Maybe it hadn't. Maybe he still understood. Maybe he just wasn't the one deciding anymore. I closed my eyes for a moment, and Vanessa's voice slipped back into my thoughts. Smooth, confident, controlled. She doesn't mind. We already talked about it. She'll help. Not a question. A conclusion. I opened my eyes again. Looked down at the papers spread across the desk. This wasn't random. This was structure, carefully built, repeated, reinforced, and I had been standing at the center of it, without ever seeing the shape it. Form.my phone buzzed again. Another message. Mom, we really need that money today. Vanessa already committed. I stared at the words. How easily responsibility had been shifted. Not, we decided. Not, we planned. She committed. And I was expected to follow. I set the phone face down on the desk. For a long time, I didn't move. Then, slowly, I reached for a pen. Not to write a check, but to start marking something else. Every transfer, every date, every reason. Because for the first time, I wasn't preparing to give. I was preparing to understand. And once you truly understand something, you can't go back to not seeing it. There was a time when I never questioned my place in this family. Not once did I lean back in the chair, the papers still spread out in front of me. But my mind had already gone somewhere else, somewhere quieter, warmer, back to a different house at a different time. My husband, Richard, used to sit at this very desk. He had a habit of tapping his pen lightly against the wood whenever he was thinking. Not loud, just a soft, steady rhythm. It used to annoy me. Now, I would give anything to hear it again. We built everything together. If that's not something people say lightly, we actually did. When we first bought our home, it was small. 2 bedrooms, outdated kitchen, floors that creaked with every step. We didn't have much, but we had a plan. Richard worked long hours. I managed the house. And when our son was born, everything we did, every decision we made, revolved around him. Make sure he never feels like he is less than anyone else. Richard once told me I remember that night clearly. We were sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out between us. The numbers didn't always add up easily back then, but his voice was calm, certain. We'll figure it out, he said. We always do. And we did. We saved. We sacrificed. There were years I didn't buy new clothes, years we skipped vacations, years where every dollar had a purpose before we even earned it. But our son, he had everything he needed, and more. I remember his first bicycle, blue, slightly too big for him. Richard spent an entire Saturday adjusting the seat, tightening the brakes, making sure it was perfect. Our son fell 3 times that afternoon. Each time, Richard helped him up, never once showing frustration, just patience. That's how you learn. He said that's the man I married, steady, reliable, fair. He believed in providing. But he also believed in boundaries. That's something I didn't fully understand until much later. There's a difference between helping and being used. He once said I didn't think much of it at the time, because back then no one was using us. Or at least, I didn't think they were. Years passed. Our son grew up, went to college, paid for, bought his first home, with help, started his business, with support. Every step of the way, we were there, not because he asked, but because we wanted to be. That's what parents do. When Richard got sick, things changed, slowly at first, then all at once. Hospitals, medications, quiet conversations late at night. I remember one evening in particular. The room was dim, just like tonight, machines humming. Softly beside him, his hand, weaker than I had ever felt it, he looked at me and said something I didn't fully understand back then. You need to be careful, he said. I smiled. Told him not to worry. He shook his head slightly. Even that small movement seemed to take effort. I'm serious, he continued. You have a good heart, but not everyone will protect it the way I did. I remember laughing softly, not because it was funny, but because it felt impossible. This is our family, I told him. There's nothing to be careful about. He didn't argue. He just looked at me for a long moment. There was something in his eyes, something I couldn't quite name at the time. Concern, maybe even regret. After he passed, the house felt different, not just empty, unprotected. I didn't notice the shift right away. Grief has a way of dulling your awareness. You focus on getting through the day, making it to the next morning, and during that time, my son stepped in more, handled things, made decisions. I was grateful. Vanessa, too. She was attentive in the beginning, helpful, organized. I'll take care of this, she would say, and I let her. It felt natural, logical, even comforting, because I believed something very simple, something I had never questioned. That family doesn't take advantage of you. Sitting there now, in my study, with years of numbers laid out in front of me, I realized something else. Richard had seen this coming. Not the details, not the exact shape of it, but the possibility, and I had dismissed it, not because I was naive, but because I trusted. I looked down at the papers again. At the numbers. At the pattern. And for the first time, I understood what he meant. Helping is a choice. Being used is something else entirely. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been easier. If someone had stood up at that party and said, that was disrespectful, maybe I would have seen it sooner. Maybe I would have stopped it. But that's not how it works. Not with things like this. It happens quietly, repeatedly, until it becomes normal. 2 days after the party, I received an invitation. Another gathering. This time, smaller. A brunch at Vanessa's friend's house. I almost didn't go. But something in me, something new, something sharper, told me I should. So I did. The house was beautiful. Open floor plan, white marble countertops, fresh flowers placed carefully on every surface. Everything felt curated, intentional. Vanessa was already there when I arrived. Of course she was. She moved easily through the room, greeting people, laughing softly, touching arms as she spoke. Effortless. When she saw me, she smiled. That same polished smile. "You made it," she said, leaning in for a quick, light hug. Her perfume lingered for a moment after she stepped away. "Of course," I replied. My voice sounded calm, even to me. For a while, everything seemed normal. We sat. We ate. People talked about vacations, schools, home renovations. The usual things. Then, slowly, it began again. "So lucky to have family support," someone said across the table. Vanessa laughed lightly. "Oh, we do," she said. "We're very blessed." She gestured toward me with her fork. "We've got built-in backup." A few people smiled. One woman chuckled. I didn't react. Then another comment. Later, near the coffee table, "We were able to redo the entire patio this summer," Vanessa said. "Wow, that must have been expensive," someone replied. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, smiled. "Well, let's just say we didn't have to worry too much about the budget." Her eyes flicked toward me. Just for a second. That was enough. I felt it again. That same subtle shift in the room. Not loud, not obvious, but present. This time, I didn't look away. I watched. Not just her, but everyone else. Some people laughed. Some stayed quiet. And a very few, looked uncomfortable. That's when I noticed her. She was sitting near the end of the table, older than the others. Maybe early 70s. Silver hair, cut short. No makeup. Simple cardigan. She hadn't laughed. Not once. Our eyes met briefly. And in that moment, there was understanding. Later, as people began to move around, she approached me. Slowly. Carefully. "May I sit?" she asked. I nodded. She lowered herself into the chair beside me, setting her cup of tea down with steady hands. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, quietly, "Do you realize what she's doing?" The question wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusatory. It was certain. I looked at her. Really looked this time. "Yes," I said. It was the first time I had. Said it out loud. She nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "My name is Margaret," she said. I introduced myself. She glanced across the room, where Vanessa was laughing again, surrounded by people. "She's been telling those stories for a while," Margaret said softly. "Stories?" I asked. Margaret gave a small, almost sad smile. "About how generous you are," she said. "How you love taking care of everything." I felt something tighten in my chest. "She makes it sound," Margaret paused, choosing her words carefully. "Like it's your role." Role. That word again. "She doesn't mean harm," I said automatically. Margaret looked at me. Not unkindly. "No," she said. "People like that rarely think they do." The room felt quieter, even though nothing had changed. Margaret leaned slightly closer. "But intention doesn't change impact," she added. I didn't respond, because there was nothing to argue with. We sat in silence for a moment, watching. Then she said something that stayed with me. "You remind me of myself," she said. I turned to her. Before I learned to say no. The words didn't land like a warning. They landed like a mirror. And for the first time, I realized something important. This wasn't just happening to me. It had happened before. To someone else. And it would keep happening. Unless I stopped it. It started with something small. Almost invisible. That afternoon, after I returned home from brunch, I didn't sit in the dark this time. I opened the curtains. Let the light in. There's something about daylight. It doesn't let you hide from things. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, did you send the $1,200? Same message. Different day. I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. A car passed slowly. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Everything felt ordinary. Except it wasn't. I picked up the phone. Read the message again. For years, my response would have been immediate. Yes. Of course. Sending it now. But this time, I didn't move. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, set the phone down on the counter, and made myself lunch. Nothing special. Just a simple sandwich. Turkey, bread, a slice of cheese. I ate slowly, chewing each bite, letting the silence stretch. The phone buzzed again. Mom. Then again. Hello. I wiped my hands with a napkin, walked back to the counter, looked at the screen. 3 missed messages. I picked up the phone, typed, paused, deleted, typed again. Finally, I won't be able to send it. I read the sentence twice before pressing send. Simple, clear, no explanation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, my phone rang. I stared at it. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, Mom. My son's voice came through, tight, controlled. Yes. What do you mean you won't be able to send it? I leaned against the counter. I mean exactly that. A pause. That doesn't make sense, he said. There it was again. Not concern. Not curiosity. Confusion, as if something expected had failed to happen. I'm not sending it, I repeated. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, Vanessa already signed them up, he said. I closed my eyes briefly. I understand, I replied. So, he pressed. So. Such a small word. But behind it, an entire assumption. So you'll fix it.so you'll step in.so you'll do what you always do. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said. The silence on the other end shifted. Sharpened. That's not fair, Mom. Fair. Another interesting word. I opened my eyes. Looked straight ahead. What isn't fair? I asked. You know how important this is for the kids, he said, his voice rising slightly now. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the silence sit between us. Because for the first time, I wasn't rushing to fill it. I've helped many times before, I said calmly. That's different, he replied quickly. Different? How? I asked. Another pause. Then, you've never said no. There it was. Not accusation. Not anger. Expectation. Broken. I felt something settle inside me. Not heavy. Not painful. Just clear. That doesn't mean I can't, I said. The line went quiet. Then, softer this time. Is this about the other night? I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it confirmed something. He knew. Maybe not fully, but enough. It's about many things, I said. Another silence. Then, Vanessa thinks you're overreacting. Of course she did. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. I'm sure she does, I replied. My voice didn't change. Didn't rise. Didn't fall. That seemed to unsettle him more than anything else. Mom. There was something different in his tone now. Uncertainty. We'll talk about this later, I said. And before he could respond, I ended the call. I set the phone down gently on the counter. For a long moment, I just stood there, waiting. For guilt. For doubt. For regret. But none of it came. Instead, there was something else. Space. Quiet. Control. I walked back to the window. Looked outside again. The street hadn't changed. But I had. Because sometimes, the first no isn't loud. It doesn't come with anger. Or confrontation. Sometimes, it's just a quiet shift. A line you finally see. And choose not to cross again. It didn't take long. That's the thing about change. When you stop playing your role, everyone else notices immediately. The next morning, my phone was quiet. Too quiet. No messages. No updates. No good morning. For years, I had been included in everything. Not because they wanted to share, but because they needed something. And now, there was nothing. I made my coffee, sat at the table, waited, not for them, but for what would come next. It arrived around noon. A message from Vanessa. Not my son. Her. Hi. I think we need to clear something up. I stared at the screen. No greeting. No warmth. Just control. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I finished my coffee, washed the cup, dried my hands. Then I sat down again and opened the message. She continued. It's not fair to put us in a difficult position like this. The kids were counting on that program. I read it twice. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she mention the party. Only the inconvenience. I typed slowly. I'm sure you'll find another solution. I pressed send. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, we wouldn't be in this situation if you had just followed through. Followed through. As if I had made a promise. As if I had signed something. As if my role had terms. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't agree to it, I replied. There was a pause. Longer this time. Then, you've never had a problem helping before. There it was again. The past. Used as a contract. I didn't respond right away. Because for the first time, I saw it clearly. Every time I had said yes, I had been writing a rule. And now that I was breaking it, they didn't know how to respond. My phone rang again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I answered. Vanessa's voice came through. Calm. Controlled. But colder than before. I don't understand what's happening with you, she said. I didn't interrupt. You've always been supportive, she continued. This sudden change, it's confusing. Confusing. I almost smiled again. I don't think it is, I said quietly. A pause. What does that mean? She asked. It means I'm just seeing things differently now. Silence. Then, sharper. Seeing what exactly? I stood up slowly. walked toward the window again. The expectations, I said. Another pause. There are no expectations, she replied quickly. That was the first lie she said out loud. I let it sit. Didn't challenge it. Didn't argue. Because I didn't need to. Yes, I said simply. That seemed to unsettle her. You're making this into something it's not, she added. No, I replied. I'm just no longer ignoring it. The line went quiet. Then, softer, but tighter. You're hurting your son. There it was. The shift. From logic to guilt. I closed my eyes briefly. I don't believe that, I said. You are, she insisted. He's stressed. He didn't expect this from you. Of course he didn't. Neither did I. I think he'll be okay, I said. That answer seemed to frustrate her more than anything else. Because it didn't give her anything to push against. You've changed, she said. I opened my eyes. Looked straight ahead. Yes, I replied. And for the first time, I didn't soften it. Didn't explain it. Just said it. Another silence. Then, I think we need some space, she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I agree, I said. The call ended shortly after. No goodbye, just distance. I stood there for a long moment, phone still in my hand. Then I set it down, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I had done something wrong. Because sometimes, when people say you've changed, what they really mean is, you've stopped being convenient. It didn't take long. That's the thing about change. When you stop playing your role, everyone else notices immediately. The next morning, my phone was quiet. Too quiet. No messages. No updates. No good morning. For years, I had been included in everything. Not because they wanted to share, but because they needed something. And now, there was nothing. I made my coffee, sat at the table, waited, not for them, but for what would come next. It arrived around noon. A message from Vanessa. Not my son. Her. Hi. I think we need to clear something up. I stared at the screen. No greeting. No warmth. Just control. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I finished my coffee, washed the cup, dried my hands. Then I sat down again and opened the message. She continued. It's not fair to put us in a difficult position like this. The kids were counting on that program. I read it twice. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she mention the party. Only the inconvenience. I typed slowly. I'm sure you'll find another solution. I pressed send. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, we wouldn't be in this situation if you had just followed through. Followed through. As if I had made a promise. As if I had signed something. As if my role had terms. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't agree to it, I replied. There was a pause. Longer this time. Then, you've never had a problem helping before. There it was again. The past. Used as a contract. I didn't respond right away. Because for the first time, I saw it clearly. Every time I had said yes, I had been writing a rule. And now that I was breaking it, they didn't know how to respond. My phone rang again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I answered. Vanessa's voice came through. Calm. Controlled. But colder than before. I don't understand what's happening with you, she said. I didn't interrupt. You've always been supportive, she continued. This sudden change, it's confusing. Confusing. I almost smiled again. I don't think it is, I said quietly. A pause. What does that mean? She asked. It means I'm just seeing things differently now. Silence. Then, sharper. Seeing what exactly? I stood up slowly. Walked toward the window again. The expectations, I said. Another pause. There are no expectations, she replied quickly. That was the first lie she said out loud. I let it sit. Didn't challenge it. Didn't argue. Because I didn't need to. Yes, I said simply. That seemed to unsettle her. You're making this into something it's not, she added. No, I replied. I'm just no longer ignoring it. The line went quiet. Then, softer, but tighter. You're hurting your son. There it was. The shift. From logic to guilt. I closed my eyes briefly. I don't believe that, I said. You are, she insisted. He's stressed. He didn't expect this from you. Of course he didn't. Neither did I. I think he'll be okay, I said. That answer seemed to frustrate her more than anything else. Because it didn't give her anything to push against. You've changed, she said. I opened my eyes. Looked straight ahead. Yes, I replied. And for the first time, I didn't soften it. Didn't explain it. Just said it. Another silence. Then, I think we need some space, she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I agree, I said. The call ended shortly after. No goodbye, just distance. I stood there for a long moment, phone still in my hand. Then I set it down. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I had done something wrong. Because sometimes, when people say you've changed, what they really mean is, you've stopped being convenient, but powerful. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. Not the bank, not the lawyer, not even my closest friend. Some things work better in silence. The next move wasn't about confrontation. It was about confirmation. Because knowing something and proving it to yourself are two different things. On the fourth day, my phone lit up again. My son. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, he said, his tone noticeably softer this time. Yes. There was a pause. We were thinking, maybe we overreacted a little, he continued. I didn't respond. I just listened. That program for the kids, we figured something out, he added quickly. It's fine now. Of course they did. I'm glad, I said. Another pause. Then, listen, we're having dinner on Sunday. Just something small. You should come. Should. Not we'd love to have you. Not we miss you. Just should. I looked out the window. The same street. The same stillness. What's the occasion? I asked. No occasion, he said. Just family. Family. That word felt different now. I'll think about it, I replied. There was a slight hesitation on his end. Then, Vanessa says hi. Of course she did. Tell her I said hello, I answered. The call ended shortly after. I stood there for a moment, phone still in my hand. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I understood exactly what this was. A reset attempt. Not an apology. A recalibration. They were adjusting. Testing. Seeing if things could go back to the way they were. I decided to let them try. Sunday came quietly. I chose a simple outfit. Nothing special. Nothing that drew attention. When I arrived, the house looked the same. Clean. Organized. Carefully arranged. Vanessa opened the door. Her smile was warm. Almost too warm. I'm so glad you came, she said, stepping aside to let me in. Her tone was different. Softer. Measured. I nodded. Thank you for inviting me. Dinner was already set. Candles lit. Plates arranged. It looked familiar. We sat down. For the first few minutes, conversation stayed light. The kids talked about school. My son mentioned work. Vanessa asked me about my week. Surface level. Careful. Then, slowly, it shifted. So, Vanessa said, placing her fork down gently. We've been thinking about doing some upgrades to the house. There it was. Not direct. Not immediate. But moving in that direction. That sounds nice, I said. She smiled. Yes, but it's a bit of an investment, she added. Of course it was. My son glanced at her. Then at me. A silent exchange. Then he spoke. We were wondering if you might be able to help. Just a little. Just a little. I folded my hands in my lap. Looked at both of them. And for the first time, I didn't feel pressure. I felt clarity. How much? I asked. Vanessa answered quickly. About $10,000. But it would really make a difference. Of course it would. Everything always did. I nodded slowly. I see. There was a brief pause. Hope, beginning to form in their expressions. Expectation, returning. The system, trying to restart. I leaned back slightly in my chair and said something I had never said before. I'll need time to think about it. Silence. Not long, but enough. Vanessa's smile tightened. Just slightly. My son shifted in his seat. That's fine, he said quickly. But his tone had changed. Because they heard it. Not hesitation. Change. Dinner continued. But something had shifted again. Not in me. In them. Because now, they weren't sure anymore. And uncertainty is where control begins to slip. That night, as I drove home, I felt something settle into place. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just readiness. Because the test had worked. They hadn't changed. They had only adjusted their approach. And now, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. They didn't wait long. 2 days after that dinner, my phone rang again. This time, I didn't need to check who it was. I already knew. Mom, my son said, skipping any greeting. Yes. We need to finalize things for the renovation, he continued. The contractor's asking for a deposit. Of course he was. I leaned back in my chair. Looked at the folder on my desk. I told you I needed time, I said calmly. A pause. How much time, he asked. There it was again. Not if. Just when. I stood up slowly. Walked toward the window. I've already made a decision, I said. Silence. Then, and he asked. I won't be contributing, I replied. The words landed clean. No hesitation. No apology. On the other end of the line, everything changed. What? He said. Not loud, not angry, just stunned. I won't be giving you the money, I repeated. A longer silence this time. Then, sharper, why not? Why? Such a simple question. But behind it, an entire belief system. I turned slightly, glancing at the desk behind me. At the papers. At the numbers. Because I've already given enough, I said. That was the truth. But not the whole truth. And for the first time, I was ready to say all of it. I went through my records. I continued. Another pause. What records? He asked. All of them. I walked back to the desk, placed my hand lightly on the folder. Every transfer, every payment, every small help that added up over the years. Silence. Then, Mom, what are you talking about? His voice had changed again, less certain now, because something in my tone didn't match the script. I'm talking about a pattern, I said. I opened the folder. Didn't need to look. I already knew what was inside. 5,000 for the kitchen, I said. 2,300 for the car. 8,500 for your anniversary party. I paused. 1,200 for the school program you asked about last week. Silence. Thick this time. Heavy. You kept track of all that? He asked. I smiled faintly. No, I said. I remembered it. That landed harder than anything else. Because memory doesn't lie. Before he could respond, another voice entered the call.